You didn't choose your type. You think you did. You think it's the laugh, the confidence, the way they walk into a room. You think it's chemistry, that magnetic pull that happens before a single word gets spoken. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That pull, it was written before you were old enough to know what an attraction even was. You are not choosing who you fall for based on who is good for you. You are choosing based on what feels familiar. And familiar, for most people, is not the same as safe. It's not the same as healthy. And it's definitely not the same as love. It's a pattern. One that was built in a house you grew up in the silences between conversations, in the moments when you needed something and no one came, or in the chaos that you learned to call normal. This video is about that pattern, where it comes from, how it works inside you. Why does it keep pulling you toward the same kind of person, even when you can see the red flags from a mile away? And most importantly, what to do with that knowledge. Stay with me. Every person you've ever been drawn to fits a template. Not perfectly, but closely enough. Psychologists call this your internal working model. It's the mental blueprint you built in childhood, a set of unconscious expectations about what relationships feel like, what love looks like, and what you need to do to receive it. Here's how it gets built. You are born completely dependent. Physically, emotionally, neurologically. Your brain is not finished. It is actively forming based on every single experience you have. And the most important experiences, the ones that wire you deepest, are the ones involving your caregivers. How did they respond when you cried? How did they handle conflict? Did they come closer when you were scared or pull away? Were they warm and consistent, or warm on some days and cold on others? Were they present, or physically there but emotionally somewhere else entirely? Your brain took notes on all of it, not consciously. You were not sitting at 2 years old thinking, interesting, my father shuts down emotionally when tension arises. I'll factor that into my future relationship choices. No, it was quieter than that. More automatic. Your nervous system was learning what to expect from the people closest to you, and it stored that learning as a feeling. A felt sense of what closeness is supposed to feel like. That feeling? It became your compass. And here's the problem. Compasses point to what's familiar, not to what's good. So if familiar was chaotic, you will be drawn to chaos and call it passion. If familiar was cold, you will interpret emotional distance as depth. If familiar was unpredictable, you would read hot and cold behavior as exciting rather than exhausting. Your nervous system is not judging these people. It's recognizing them, and recognition feels exactly like connection. In the 1960s and 70s, a developmental psychologist named John Bowlby laid the foundation for what we now call attachment theory. His colleague Mary Ainsworth later ran a now famous experiment, the strange situation, that identified distinct patterns in how children respond to separation and reunion with their caregivers. What she found wasn't just about children. It was a map of how adults love. Let's go through the 3 primary patterns. And as you read, pay attention to what lands in your chest. Pattern 1. Secure attachment. Securely attached children had caregivers who were consistently available and responsive. Not perfect, but reliably present. When the child was scared, the parent soothed them. When the child explored and came back, the parent was there. The child learned, I can need things. I can express what I need. And the people who love me will respond. As adults, securely attached people are not without problems in relationships. But they have a baseline of trust. They can communicate needs without it feeling like an act of self-destruction. They don't interpret a partner's bad day as a sign that they're about to be abandoned. They don't need to perform to feel worthy. Here's the internal sensation of secure attachment in a relationship. The other person texts back late. There's a moment of, wonder what's up. Then it passes. Because the brain doesn't immediately reach for the worst-case story. It holds the evidence it has. This person has shown up for me consistently, and it stays regulated. That's what secure attachment feels like from the inside. A kind of baseline steadiness. Not boring. Not numb. Steady. Now here's where it gets harder. Pattern 2. Anxious attachment. Anxiously attached children had inconsistent caregivers. Sometimes warm, sometimes distant. Sometimes attuned, sometimes unavailable. for reasons the child could not predict or control. The child's nervous system responded logically to this unpredictability. I need to stay alert. I need to work harder to get a connection. I cannot relax, because the connection might disappear at any moment. The result? A child, and later an adult, who is hypervigilant in relationships. The internal sensation of anxious attachment in a relationship is not just worry. It's more specific than that. It's checking the message thread to see if they've been online. It's the spike of adrenaline when a text goes unanswered for 2 hours. It's rehearsing conversations before they happen, rewriting them after, replaying the moment they seemed slightly off, and trying to decode them. It's lying next to someone who loves you and still feeling a low hum, but for how long? And here is the brutal texture of it. Anxiously attached people are often drawn to avoidant partners, because the avoidant partner's emotional distance creates exactly the kind of inconsistency that feels familiar. The anxious person has been trained to work hard for connection. The avoidant partner requires exactly that. It's a fit that feels like chemistry and functions like a wound. The chase feels like love. Reaching them feels like victory. Their warmth, when it finally comes, feels more intense than anything, because you had to earn it. Sound familiar? Pattern 3. Avoidant attachment. Avoidantly attached children had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable or dismissive of vulnerability. When the child was scared or sad, the caregiver either didn't respond or subtly communicated that neediness was unwelcome. The child adapted brilliantly and painfully. They learned to suppress emotional needs, to become self-sufficient, and not to ask for things. Because asking felt dangerous, not physically, but relationally dangerous. Asking meant risking rejection, and rejection at that age felt like a threat to survival. The internal sensation of avoidant attachment in adulthood is not coldness. That's a common misconception. It's more like a wall that goes up automatically. You're in a good moment with someone, genuinely close, genuinely connected, and then something shifts. An invisible tightening. An impulse to create space, to get busy, to find something wrong with this person, so there's a reason to pull back. That makes logical sense. It's not that they don't want a connection. It's that closeness, at a certain depth, triggers a system that was trained to withdraw. The body perceives danger, even when the heart wants to stay. Avoidant people often feel most comfortable during the early stages of relationships, when there's still emotional distance. When things deepen, they feel the familiar suffocation, and they do what they were conditioned to do, pull back, and the anxious person behind them leans in even harder. The cycle repeats itself. You've probably had this thought. Why do I keep ending up here? Different person, different face, different beginning, but the same dynamic, the same arguments, the same feeling of chasing someone emotionally unavailable, or being chased by someone who needs more than you know how to give. The same 3 a.m. feeling of being alone inside a relationship. Here's the psychological mechanism behind that. It's called repetition compulsion. Sigmund Freud identified it over a century ago. The idea that humans unconsciously repeat painful patterns. Not because they enjoy pain, but because the unconscious mind is trying to master an old wound, to get a different ending to a story that never resolved. If your father was emotionally absent, part of your unconscious is still trying to win his attention, and so you find yourself drawn to emotionally distant partners, because the possibility of finally getting through to them, finally being chosen by someone who doesn't choose easily, that would feel like resolution, like healing. But it rarely provides that. It usually just reopens the wound. Here's what that looks like from the inside. You meet someone new. There's a pull you can't explain. You tell yourself it's chemistry. Maybe it is, partly. But underneath the chemistry is recognition. Something in you says, I know this feeling, I've been here before. And that familiarity registers as safety, as rightness, as this is meant to be. You move forward. Things feel electric. And then, slowly, you start to notice the patterns, the ways they are unavailable, the ways they trigger your oldest fears, the moments where you shrink, or chase, or perform, or shut down, the same moves you made in the house you grew up in. And you don't understand why you can't stop. Because you're conscious of it. You can see it. You've read the books. You know the terms. But the pattern runs deeper than knowledge. It runs in the body, in the nervous system, in the felt sense of what love is supposed to cost. And that's the part that doesn't change just from understanding it intellectually. Here is something most people never think about. You didn't just inherit a blueprint from your own experiences. You inherited one from your parents' experiences. The way your mother relates to intimacy was shaped by her mother, and your father's emotional availability, or unavailability, was shaped by what he was taught about men and feelings. The way your parents fought, didn't fight, or went silent for 3 days without addressing why all of it was passed down. A legacy of patterns that move through generations like furniture nobody thought to get rid of. Researchers in developmental psychology call this intergenerational transmission of attachment. Studies show that a caregiver's own attachment style is one of the strongest predictors of their child's attachment style. This isn't about blame. It's about understanding how deep the roots go. Your parents didn't intentionally damage you. Most of them were doing the best they could, but their capacity was shaped by their own histories, what they were given and what was denied. The internal feeling that comes with this realization is specific. It's not anger, not exactly. It's something quieter, a kind of grief without a clear target. You're not mourning a person. You're mourning the version of childhood you needed but didn't fully receive. The consistent presence. The emotional attunement. The moment when someone looked at you when you were struggling and said, without conditions, "I see you, and you are not too much." That grief is real. It deserves acknowledgement. And it must be faced. Because until it is, it continues to drive you. This isn't just theoretical psychology. Everything we've discussed has a physical basis. When you first connect with a caregiver, your brain forms neural pathways, connections between neurons that encode what relationships feel like, what to expect, how to behave, and how to regulate your emotions around others. These pathways become your default route, the highway your brain uses automatically. Now, here's the neuroscience behind attraction. When you meet someone who matches your internal working model, your attachment blueprint, your brain responds in a specific way. The dopaminergic reward system activates, the same system involved in excitement, novelty, and motivation. It sends a chemical signal that says, "This is important. Pay attention." If that person aligns with a secure template warmth, consistency, attunement, the response is pleasant and steady, feeling like comfort and interest simultaneously. But if they fit an insecure template, inconsistency, unavailability, the need to chase the activation can be even more intense because uncertainty itself triggers the dopamine system. Variable reward. The same mechanism behind gambling creates stronger neurological hooks than consistent rewards. That's why emotionally unavailable people can seem more magnetic than emotionally available ones. It's not a character flaw. It's a neurological pattern layered on top of an attachment pattern rooted in childhood experiences. The person who is warm, consistent, and genuinely interested in you might feel flat by comparison, not because they are less, but because your nervous system hasn't learned to interpret their signals as high-intensity input, as it was conditioned to do. This is the specific internal sensation people describe when they say a healthy relationship feels boring. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means your system was calibrated to a different energy level. Learning to trust calm and stay in it, rather than creating drama to make it seem real, is one of the most important pieces of relational work anyone can do. This is where most conversations end. They identify the pattern, name the attachment style, tell you that your childhood shaped you, and then nothing. Or worse, a 10-step list that treats a nervous system rewired over decades like a to-do app. Real change in attachment patterns is not a checklist. It is a long, non-linear process. But it does have identifiable components. Here's what the research and clinical literature truly say about it. 1. Awareness is the beginning, not the solution. Understanding your attachment style gives you a framework. That's valuable. It allows you to notice when the pattern is active, when you're chasing due to anxiety, not genuine desire, when you're pulling back out of fear, not preference, when the chemistry you feel with someone is actually the hum of familiarity with dysfunction. Awareness creates the gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where change occurs. But awareness alone doesn't rewire the nervous system. It is the first step, not the end. 2. Corrective emotional experiences. This is the most consistent mechanism psychologists point to when explaining how attachment patterns shift. A corrective emotional experience is exactly what it sounds like, an experience in a relationship that contradicts the old expectation. The anxious person expects abandonment when they express a need. The corrective experience is a partner who stays, listens, and doesn't punish vulnerability. The avoidant person expects suffocation when someone gets close. The corrective experience is a partner who gives space without withdrawing love. These experiences don't erase the old pattern, but they create evidence against it. They lay down new neural pathways. Over time, with repetition, those pathways strengthen. The key is, you have to be in an environment, whether a relationship or a therapeutic setting, where these experiences can happen. That requires choosing differently, and that can feel wrong at first, because it doesn't match the template. The person who is right for you may not feel like the one you're supposed to be with, not because they're wrong, but because they're unfamiliar. And your nervous system has been reading unfamiliar as incorrect for a long time. 3. Therapy, specifically attachment-focused or somatic work. The body holds the pattern. Intellectual understanding resides in the prefrontal cortex. But attachment responses are stored in deeper, older parts of the brain like the amygdala, limbic system, and vagus nerve. Talk therapy can reach some of this. A skilled therapist provides a consistent, attuned, boundaried relationship, which is itself a corrective emotional experience. Over time, the therapeutic relationship models what a secure connection feels like at a bodily level. Somatic approaches therapy modalities that work directly with the body's sensations and responses can access areas that talk therapy can't fully reach. Internal family systems, EMDR, and somatic experiencing aren't magic. They require time and commitment. But they target the level where the pattern actually resides. 4. Learning to tolerate discomfort instead of escaping it. This one is unglamorous. It doesn't make for an exciting social media post. But it is where real work happens. Changing your attachment habits requires tolerating the discomfort of the unfamiliar. Staying in a moment that feels unnaturally calm. Not texting someone who's harmful when anxiety spikes. Not retreating from someone good because closeness triggers your threat response. Every time you remain in the discomfort and don't run the old pattern, you weaken that neural pathway slightly. You build a new one. It's slow, it's repetitive, and it often feels longer and less fair. That does not mean it isn't working. That's just how the process actually feels. Here's what this video is really about. Not just attachment styles and neural pathways. Not just psychology. It's about the moment you realize that the person you've been falling for again and again, the type that your gut says yes to before your mind catches up, was never really about them. It was always about something that happened before them. Before the first date. Before the first heartbreak. Before you even knew love was something you could want and not have at the same time. You were trained to recognize a feeling. And you've been chasing that feeling ever since, calling it chemistry, calling it fate, calling it being unlucky in love. The internal sensation of this realization is very specific. It's not dramatic. It's not a breakdown. It's quieter than that. It's sitting with the awareness that the people you've chosen and the people you've let slip away were not random. There was logic to all of it. A brutal, unconscious, perfectly consistent logic. The one who felt electric. They matched the template of someone who needed to earn love. The one who felt flat. They offered something your system didn't recognize as real yet. The one you couldn't stop thinking about, even when they hurt you. Their inconsistency was a language your nervous system had been fluent in since childhood. None of that makes you broken. It makes you human, built by your history, like everyone else. But here is what that realization asks of you. It asks you to grieve the template. To stop chasing the resolution of an old story in a new person. To let your nervous system learn a different frequency, slowly, uncomfortably, with patience that doesn't come naturally to anyone who grew up needing to move fast. It asks you to get genuinely curious about the people who feel stable, who feel kind, who feel uncomplicated, and to ask yourself honestly, is this actually boring, or am I just not used to being treated well? That is the work, not the insight. Not the vocabulary. Not the ability to name your attachment style at a dinner party. The work is in the choosing. In the meantime, in the moment where the old pull activates, and you recognize it for what it is, a signal from the past, not a compass for the present. That is where the pattern ends. That is where something different begins. Think about the last person you were drawn to. Not who they were on paper. Not what they said or how they looked. Think about how they felt. The specific texture of that pull. The sensation in your chest when they went quiet. The way your body moved toward them, even when your mind had questions. Now ask yourself honestly, when did I first feel that feeling? And who was I with when I learned it? That question alone, if you sit with it, will tell you more about your relationship patterns than any quiz, any test, any surface-level content. Sit with it. If this video made you look at yourself differently, even slightly, that's what this channel is for. We go this deep every time. No surface, no filler. Just the real mechanics of why people do what they do. Subscribe. The next video is already waiting for you. See you there.